Buffer glitch is a glitch that lets you bypass signs and optional boss trigger region events that normally set your character to go backwards. However, with buffer glitch, you can jump into the sign or region and then continue through them. It was originally found around 5 days after the game's release on the Nintendo Switch. It was originally brought to the speedrunning community's attention by Doom Knight, and then immediately investigated by Blue and Cad, and has overall been used in speedruns for quite a while and used in a variety of ways. Buffer glitch is also the catalyst for many of the more advanced glitches, and is fundamental to getting those to work. Buffer glitch is currently known to be possible on the Nintendo Switch version of the game, as well as the PC version has been confirmed to not work on the other versions, so the majority of glitches in Octopath 1 are exclusive to the Nintendo Switch version and PC version. The fundamentals of buffer glitch is having the game freeze up in a certain way where it keeps running for a little bit, taking inputs, but then doesn't actually execute upon them. When you perform the freezing action, the visuals of the game freeze up while the background music keeps going. If you have some other situation, such as maybe clicking outside of the game, that won't work. Here we can see the visuals continue, but the audio stops. What we specifically need is where the game visuals freeze up while the audio continues. While it's frozen for a little bit, it will be receiving inputs, so like moving in a direction, and upon unfreezing, it'll execute all of those at once. When it's doing that, it's not doing all the checks it normally would. Around every sign, there's a trigger region. When you enter that, it'll prompt this event and make you step back a bit. We can get right up to that trigger region if we want, and then buffer, if we hold into the direction of the sign and then release, we'll do all the movement at once, and then, once it's done doing all that movement, it checks that we're inside the sign. Now with signs, they only push you back a few number of steps, and in this case, or in all cases that we can use this, the sign hasn't actually moved it outside of its trigger region, so we can move left without re-triggering the sign. In fact, we can move around within the trigger region all we want. Once we move outside of it and then back in, then it triggers again. So the key to making buffer glitch useful is that it lets us jump far enough into signs so that when we trigger the signs event, it doesn't actually push us far enough to get back outside of the trigger, and then we can pass right through it. You can then also pass from the other direction, and it keeps you moving in the same direction, so you don't need to buffer on return trips. On the Nintendo Switch version of the game, the freezing action is done by returning to the Switch's home menu. When you're switching to and from, in and out of the game will temporarily put you in that freezing state. It'll accept inputs, but not update the screen. And so, to perform the buffer glitch on Nintendo Switch, you'll hold a direction, tap the home button, the game will freeze up as it's doing that, and when you return with the home button, you also have a moment of input as well. Keep holding the direction, and when you've returned into the game, it'll execute all that movement while it was switching to and from the home menu. On PC version, it's often a bit easier. There are two main setups. Some freeze up the game while refreshing the graphics driver. That's fairly specific to computers, but that does work in full screen mode. Easier is if you're willing to work in windowed mode, you can just click and drag the window. So here I can move around. I'm just going to hold a direction for a bit. And then when I click and drag the window around, the game's frozen up, and if I release, we can see a bit of a jump there. So again, to demonstrate, when actually done in practice, I would be holding in a direction. Now I'm clicking and dragging the window. When I release, I've gone inside the sign. Now you don't actually have to move the window about when dragging, you can just click and hold, and it'll still be freezing the game up. Make sure you're not clicking outside the window, because then you don't have any inputs going to the game. This also might vary by whatever window manager you have, whatever operating system you're working with, so make sure when you are trying to make buffer glitch work that it has the common effects that you're looking for, that is, freezing the visuals of the game while keeping the audio running, rather than making it so you can't put any inputs in. If you're going to be doing buffer glitch a lot, I recommend remapping some sort of keybind or button press on your controller to perform the left click. This way you don't have to use your mouse, you don't have to rely on pressing down on a mouse button, which can sometimes be small or accidentally bump your mouse. You can just leave your mouse cursor over the Windows handle and then press whatever keybind. So for instance, I have mine mapped from the back right trigger on my controller to left mouse button, and I can press and hold the right back trigger to perform a click, and that freezes up the game. And that makes it pretty smooth to just go around. I don't have to worry about accidentally clicking and dragging or messing around with my mouse itself. Now to do this in Steam, you can go into controller settings here. Here you'll have a bunch of different controller profiles. You can edit the default one, and since I already have one made, I'm just going to quickly switch. If you click here, you see a bunch of them. The one highlighted in blue is your active one. I'm going to switch to this profile so that I can edit it as an example. If you go into the edit layout, then go into whatever you want to map. I'm going to do an example with triggers, as I mentioned. You just change whatever the normal functionality is to be left mouse button. So for instance, here with this Nintendo Switch controller, ZR is going to be mapped onto left mouse, which we can get under mouse, left mouse click. So now with this profile, whenever I'm in Octopath Traveler, when I press ZR on this Pro controller, it'll perform a left mouse click. And you can experiment with this and make sure it makes sense. But let's go back into Octopath. Again, it's whenever the game is in focus itself. So for instance, this is having clicked out and is out of focus after minimizing. I'm in it, and I press ZR for me. It's doing the click action. This makes things a whole lot more comfortable. You can zip around a whole lot easier and just makes it a lot more smoother. It's also a lot easier since you don't necessarily have to make sure that you time things precisely. You can just get pretty near it and not have to worry about control sticks while clicking a mouse button. It's all in one place. In optional dungeons, there are optional bosses that are encountered when you hit a certain trigger region. These trigger regions act very much like the signs do, in that if you enter them, in this case it gives us a prompt, but if we hit no, it moves us back away from the trigger region. And so likewise, you can buffer into these sorts of regions as well. You just again approach it, do the freezing action, whatever it might be, buffer if you will, hold a direction, release, and you're inside the region. And now when we hit perhaps not, again not wanting to take this encounter, it moves us a little bit but not far enough to remove us from the trigger region. You can use this to skip any optional boss in these optional dungeons and get whatever chest is behind them. A very popular one is in this location, Marceline Catacombs, for this Master Spear, which not only is a strong spear weapon but can also sell for leaves in a speedrun. There are a few other cases where this gets used, but in general, you can just use this to get any sort of loot that's locked behind an optional boss and not have to defeat the boss itself. Another decent location to use the buffer glitch to get chests is here in Refuge Ruins. The boss trigger is right here. Bypassing it gets you access to many chests, including Enchanted Rod, a Force Shield, and some other pomegranate-like items. Final place for consideration, which is much more rarely used, but is another decent option, is here in Maw of the Ice Dragon. Buffering past this boss gets a Forbidden Dagger, which at the very least sells for some money. You might think that the ability to bypass signs would let you into story dungeons early and maybe do some sequence breaking, but this is in general not the case. To be able to progress in the story, you always need the correct story sequence, and also, whenever these signs are present, quite often the loading zone itself is also entirely disabled. You can get out of bounds quite often with this and maybe explore certain areas, but you won't be able to skip any sequence in a story. You still have to play chapters in order and do all story beats of a chapter. There are some exceptions to this, in that you can at the very least bypass in the middle of a story to break out of things that it doesn't want you to do. A basic example of this is with Ophelia chapters, or Primrose chapters, where you're guiding or luring an NPC. It doesn't want you leaving town with the NPC itself, it wants you to immediately deliver them. However, with Buffer Glitch, you can escape. This doesn't have any good use though. You will be able to see that you can't actually summon these NPCs properly in battle. And maybe if you wanted to do something strange, you could do this, but overall this has no good effect. You'll also find that in the cases of, again, Ophelia or Primrose, where there's these guiding or alluring sections for NPCs, where you're immediately meant to drop them off, even if you get out of the screen that you're meant to be locked on, you still can't fast travel. Just to demonstrate fully, even if we add Ophelia back into the party, and her chapter isn't actually in progress right now, as long as she has that NPC with her, we still can't fast travel. And again, these NPCs, they can be summoned even though they're not supposed to, but if you do so, the game will lock up. So again, interesting for experimentation, but doesn't lead to anything useful. There are a few exceptions where the loading zone for some story chapter doesn't get disabled when there is some sort of trigger region that blocks your entrance normally. We saw this in the case with Tressa Chapter 1, with the original example, in which there's that sign partway through the road there, and you can bypass that and have access to some chests, although the loading zone beyond that is disabled, and of course you still can't progress story. Here in Northreach, we're also able to bypass this particular one, and the theory here would be that this is happening because at some points it blocked you here, so later in the actual story chapter that takes place here, it blocks you inside that building, and it's not, this here blocking is not exactly next to the loading zone. If we buffer past this, well, for one, we can get access to this ISAM if we wanted that, but we can actually enter the story dungeon itself. And again, this is not needing the story to be actually active. You can do this even without the character recruited, and so in certain challenge runs this is popular so that you can get certain items here. Most popular to get here is this Void Amulet. And for those who are doing a run in which you need to collect every single sword in the game, this enchanted sword is not too bad of an option for getting that sword. This next use of buffer glitch is a bit more unique and interesting. It's like how we were in Ophelia 2 escaping the area that we were normally locked to, but now we're going to be doing that during Therion 4. And the outcome is that you get to have a different costume for Therion for quite a while, rather than just during the chapter. Now, it's not going to be a permanent costume change. If you ever complete Therion Chapter 4 and progress normally, then you'll lose the outfit like normal, but you could get to Therion 4 early, get the outfit, escape with buffer glitch, and do a bunch of other story and chapters, and still have Therion in his outfit for quite a while. There is a way of getting the outfit permanently, but it has to use a different glitch with story transfers, which will be covered in a different video. Minor spoilers for Therion Chapter 4, I'll be getting into a little bit more detail now. So during the chapter, you need to steal an outfit from one of the brigands. This one in particular is the one that lets you progress. It's a red outfit, and Therion wears it when stolen. There's also this dark blue outfit over here that won't progress the story. You'll get rejected if you try and progress into the next screen, but we can still steal it, and it's its own outfit. So I'm going to be demonstrating with this one. So now Therion has the outfit. If we try and warp somewhere right now, fast travel is unavailable, and this time the lock-on fast travel just has to do with which screens you're on. It's not like with the demonstration with Ophelia earlier, in which you had to not have the NPC on you. In this case, it's just a matter of being on these screens. And there's also this sign blocking normal exit, but we can just buffer past that, and the loading zone here still exists. And once we're outside of the town, we'll be able to fast travel again. Now if you ever re-enter Northreach, you'll still have your fast travel locked up again, but you can then just buffer out, and so all is fine. And so at this point you could go do some other story chapters, do some exploration, all those sorts of things. Eventually you will lose the costume when you return to complete Therion Chapter 4, but again there is an alternative way of doing this with a bit more of an advanced glitch that does get you the costume permanently. Now the costume change is most visible and obvious on the overworld, and all of his sprites work to match that, but you'll also be able to see it in a few other places. A place that the outfit is pretty noticeable is in a travel banter, either during a character story or in the post-game during a tavern travel banter. When you're viewing travel banter, Therion will have the outfit. A case that's a bit less obvious and easily missed is that Therion will actually also have his outfit in battles as well. But the trick to this is that Therion can't have any subjob. He needs to be in his default class of just Thief and no subjobs. And it's just the Thief outfit or Thief sprite that's getting the outfit applied. If you did have a subjob, then he'd be showing up as with that subjob in battle, but with no subjob equipped, you can see the outfit in battles. Now, all the animations are actually there for the Thief and the skills. One thing that looks a little bit strange though is when Therion gets knocked unconscious. We'll see if we can get that to happen here. So here we can see the unconscious pose. I'll try to defend to make it more visible, but when unconscious, Therion lies on his back, whereas most characters collapse on their face. Just a bit of a quirk there, but all the other animations are pretty standard. Therion will also have his outfit on during the credits. Each credits will show final hits from the various battles of chapters throughout your whole run, and if Therion was in his default thief outfit during one of those battles, an easy example is the very first chapter for Therion, then you'll see him in the outfit, much like was the case needed for just the normal battle sprite. You need to make sure he's in his default thief subjob. One last thing to keep in mind, and it's just a bit of a quirk, but if you're in some sort of dark cave in which the lead traveler takes out a lantern, if you make that Therion with his outfit, he does not have a sprite for that. And so it'll just look like a static version of whatever traveler used to be there, unchanging. It is still sort of Therion in the lead, but that's just another thing. No rotations, just that. Lastly, make sure you don't perform the steal path action, because that freezes the game. And again, that's only in the cases where you're in a cave. You can still steal normally, though, in other scenarios, and also have Therion in the lead. Just make sure he's not in the lead in a cave stealing from someone. The last use that we're going to be going over in this video for buffer glitch is avoiding encounters. And this is actually banned in Octopath speedruns, but you can use it casually if you like. If you buffer glitch while walking on screens where you can get encounters, you'll make it further before you get the encounters. And here's just going to be a comparison to draw that out. I'm just going to demonstrate with no encounter altering equipment on for either of the examples being given. And in one of them, I'm very quickly releasing and then re-holding the buffer, and you'll see that I can get quite far with this. In fact, I can traverse the whole screen without an encounter, which is normally not possible. And overall, as you can see with that demonstration, you can get much further when doing the buffer glitch to extend your steps and get less encounters, up to around maybe twice as far. I haven't experimented thoroughly with it, but it is quite significant. On many screens that you'd ordinarily get an encounter, you can guarantee no encounters. Even if you do it a little bit, you don't have to do it as much as I just spammed there. It'll extend it by enough to reduce your encounter rates on whole screens by quite a bit. While it would be interesting to route around this and reduce the RNG in speedruns, the reason it's currently banned is just because it's difficult to tell if someone is splicing when constantly buffering like that. Which, frankly, isn't a complete reason to fully ban it, since there's other ways to splice and you're going to be buffering here and there anyways. Nonetheless, the verdict is that it is banned. Still, in major glitched categories, you can still do other glitches, not this buffer glitch, but some others. And in all categories, a normal buffer glitch is allowed. In the no major glitches category, buffer glitch is allowed, so you can use it to bypass bosses and get the chests, which is how it's been used for a while. The major glitches that use buffer glitch wouldn't be allowed in no major glitches, but buffer glitch itself is still allowed in the no major glitch categories. Some final thoughts about this buffer glitch. If you are just going to use it to explore some out-of-bounds areas, that's plenty good. Sometimes the camera doesn't exactly follow you, but often you can get around and at the very least see some things at some points. There's also often ways to fall off the map. If you do ever fall off the map, it'll put you back to the default spawn or where you entered from. In this case, this was a Chapter 1 start, and so the default is right here. But if I had entered from some other screen or save point, it would be placing me there. Sometimes, if you land inside of things, or if it takes you far away from where the camera used to be, the camera will break, but you can still use the minimap to navigate a bit. And as you approach and near where the camera should line up with, it'll snap back into place. Additionally, once you've broken the camera once, quite often it works that you can then have the camera just follow you as you're moving around out of bounds, although this isn't always the case. Lastly is all the advanced glitches, which is actually why I'm here in Haunted Chapter 1. You might have noticed a moment ago when I fell into the void, I landed exactly on top of a sign. Well, that has to do with some more advanced glitches called double title screen, so you'll need to make sure that you can perform buffer glitch so that you can perform the more advanced glitches. And those just all have to do with opening the menu, and now I'm inside of a sign with a text box. And strange things can ensue from there.